Yes. You.
It was just based on the concept of thinking that you have to be perfect and then falling into that deep depression. So what I noticed is that personal experience and other people is that when you've gone through such a high in your iman, right? You're doing everything fine, and especially when you first start practicing properly, things are really great and they're fruitful and everything is haram, but in a good way because you can avoid it easily. As time goes on, and especially, for example, in my situation where you start working in kind of the non-Muslim world and things just get to you and you start to feel that it's a huge dip. And then what happens is you're kind of, the guard that you had up before that was stopping you from doing everything haram slowly starts to break down and shaitan comes and gets you, right? Then the break happens and you start to go into this crazy depression and you start to reminisce about what happened in the past and how good you were. And you feel really, really depressed and bad and you think you're a really rubbish Muslim, right? So I thought, is there a way to kind of shift this mentality from always thinking about the past because they were great? And of course, as Muslims, we know that it's not just staying in the masjid and being a perfect Muslim, it's going out there in the world that is difficult and still keeping that up, and that's where the reward is. So the mindset is the question, is how to get over,
Got you. Okay, your question is on point, and there's in fact an entire chapter in my book exactly about what you're talking about. Literally, has anyone read it? Anyone? You know which chapter it is? Right? Cool. So there's a whole chapter talking exactly about this phenomenon that you're describing. And the reason that I'm talking about it is because scholars in the past have described this phenomenon. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, for example, he talks about the path to Allah, right? And in this path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that there are different stages or madarij or stations in the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? And what he describes is that at the very beginning of the path, there's something he calls yaqaba, and that means awakening. And the awakening portion of this path is that part that you're talking about where you're like high in the sky. What I would describe it is like spiritual steroids. You're on spiritual steroids. And here's the thing about that station, that part of the path of yaqaba, of awakening, is you can liken it to a person who lived in a cave their whole life. Never seen the sky, never seen a bird, never seen a tree, for God's sakes, okay? Lived in this cave, and then one day realizes, wait a minute, there is like a door. And they step outside the door and they go outside and they look and there's like a sky and there's birds and there's trees. And that feeling, that awakening, that high, he likens that kind of like state to what happens to a person when they first find religion. When they first, that high, when you just started practicing and you didn't practice before, or someone who just converted or reverted. That high, that state is what he describes as awakening, or yaqada. Now there's certain characteristics of that state. You can liken it, as I said, to someone who's just taken spiritual steroids. What happens when you're on steroids? Well, let's go back to my Olympic example, right? What happens when a person's on steroids? Anyone? It's easier for them to do more, right? It's easier for them to lift. They have more strength and endurance, right? Because of the steroids. It's the same thing with spiritual steroids. So when you're in that state, which by the way, by definition is temporary, and this is what we have to realize. Now, why am I saying all this? Because it will then help us understand how to get to the next stage and what to do in the next stage. So what he taught, first I just want to describe this high, right? And many of us have gone through this. Even when we were born Muslim, a lot of us get to a point where we start to become we internalize that identity more, right? And we start to become maybe more practicing, and that Islamic identity becomes something more personal versus just, oh, my parents are Muslim. Right? You know what I'm saying? You start to learn more, you want to go to classes, you start wearing hijab, you grow a beard, whatever it is, right? And now you're trying to learn Quran, you're trying to take this to the next level, and it becomes a personal journey. It's no longer just, I'm Muslim by name, I'm Muslim because my parents are Muslim. That state, though, this yaqadha state is temporary by its very nature. And the other characteristic of it is that when you're in that state, things are just easier naturally. As you mentioned properly, it's easier to stay away from the haram. It's easier to be on your tahajjud. It's easier to just like, I don't know, just have like, anyway, it's just easier, right? And now, what comes along with that? Now, this is important. Because things are easier for you when you're on spiritual steroids, you also tend to fall into joining the haram police. You understand what I'm talking about? You feel me? The haram police. As you said, like you basically summarized in your question, everything's haram because it's easy for you. And that's exactly right. So this also one of the pitfalls of this state is you have the tendency to be really self-righteous and to maybe be a bit arrogant. Because you're looking at yourself and you're thinking, I'm high in the sky, I'm so religious, I am on fire. Look at all these people. They're just little people and they're not as good as me, so let me help them. And when you try to help these people, it's like kind of you come off as, now don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Islam is a religion of nasiha, right? I'm not up here to tell you don't give nasiha or you're arrogant, no. But I'm saying that sometimes we come from a place of arrogance. And the reason that happens is because we can become deceived when we're in that temporary high, thinking I'm all that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just pretty awesome because I just prayed tahajjud and I just memorized this much and you know what I mean? So we can become very sort of pleased with ourselves, and that's dangerous. Because when that happens, we become arrogant and we now feel that we are better than others. And sometimes then we go, and that's what I'm talking about the haram police, when you're like going around telling everyone what they're doing haram, and you know it's your family, and then it's like, unfortunately, when a person becomes religious, they start to just become mean sometimes. And I don't really understand that because, you know what I'm talking about? It's like you think that the more mean you are, the more religious you are, yeah? And it's like the more harsh you are with the people around you, then that means you're really hardcore Muslim, you know what I mean? But that's not the way it works, because the hadith actually says that Allah is gentle and He loves gentleness. And it actually says that He rewards for gentleness what He does not reward for harshness or any other thing. So in fact, the hadith is telling us the opposite, that when you become truly religious, when you really have the light and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heart, it's supposed to make you softer and kinder, not the other way around. You know what I'm saying? And the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ, that the best of you are the best to their families. So when you're becoming more and more religious, and you want to see, okay, how am I doing? You want to see how am I doing, right? Everybody wants you, okay, how am I doing? I want to gauge how I'm doing. The Prophet ﷺ told us, how do you gauge it? See how you are with your family. See how you are with those closest to you. How do you treat them? Are you kind with them? Are you loving with them? Are you gentle with them, or are you the opposite? Are you really harsh and really mean and really like everything they do is wrong and everything they do is criticized? That's not the gauge of true religiosity. That's actually not. That means that you've fallen into that pitfall. You've fallen into that trap. And that's a trap that happens during that yaqadha state, during that high. Because shaitan will come at you differently depending which state you're in. I spoke earlier about despair because I was talking about the crash. But while you're in the high, he'll come at you from self-righteousness and arrogance. He'll be like, you are something awesome. You know? You are something awesome, but look at all these people. And he'll make you look down on others and feel proud of yourself. Proud of yourself. Now let me, again, balance. Is there something wrong with being happy that you just prayed? No, there's nothing wrong with that. We should be happy that we prayed. We should be happy that we recorded. But here's the key difference. Here's the key difference. Where do you assign the sort of, who do you give credit to? That's the key difference. when you do something good, when you pray, or when you're able to fast, you're able to give charity, who do you give the credit to? The problem comes when you give the credit to me. It's me. It's because I'm awesome. You know what I mean? It's because I'm so religious. It's because I'm so knowledgeable and I'm so righteous and amazing, you know? So if you take the credit for it, that's what makes you arrogant. But if you give the credit to Allah, you say, yes, I am so grateful that I just prayed. And I am so happy, but I'm not happy because I'm awesome. I'm happy because Allah enabled me to pray. And so it turns into gratitude. You see the difference? So we should be pleased and happy when we worship Allah. Like that should make a believer happy. And when we don't worship Him, it should make us sad. That's the way the healthy heart should be. But the question is, who are you giving the credit to? And the problem is that when you're in the high, the credit, when you give, and this is what happens, is you're taking the credit. That's the key flaw, is that I'm taking the credit. I'm thinking it's because I'm awesome. It's because I'm so religious and because I'm so knowledgeable. That's very, very dangerous. And I'll tell you what will happen. This is the script. This is what's going to happen. Because this is just human nature. What happens is every high has a dip, a low. It's just the way it works, yeah? Gravity. So because this is temporary, it's a temporary high. And so what will happen then is you will eventually get to a low, a dip. It's just like a roller coaster, you know? It always had what goes up must come down. Now, this is where you're faced with a choice. When you get to that dip, when you get to that low, and Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah talks about that too. He talks about that dip as well. And it's when you're in that dip that shaitan will come at you through a different door. So remember when you were high, he came at you through arrogance, right? He came at you through you're awesome, and you become self-righteous, and you look down on everyone else, and you think you're just God's gift to humanity, right? But when you're low, how's he going to come at you? A different door. He's going to come at you through the door of despair. Look at you. Look what you used to be, and look at you now. And make you feel so bad about yourself, yeah? Because you were feeling so good about yourself before. And now, he makes you feel so bad about yourself that you just want to give up. And that's the plot. That's the whole point. Because you thought that when you were high, it was because of you. So now you're so down on yourself because you're disappointed in yourself. And you're thinking, I'm worthless, I'm a failure, what's the point of trying? I used to be this and now look at me. Now look at you. You know, it's like shaitan will come beat you down. How can we avoid this? I'll tell you. Now we're at that point, right? I told you a big, long story. Now I'm going to tell you, how can we avoid this? Number one, when you're in your high, don't take credit for it. That's what it is. When you're like feeling like I'm on top of my game,